The baby was asleep. The monitor said everything was fine. Both of those things were true. Neither one told the whole story. They thought the nursery was the safest room in the house. They had no idea what was already inside it. Cleo was 8 months old. She slept in a white crib in the corner room of the house her parents had bought specifically because it had a yard, a quiet street, and what the real estate listing had called original charm, which turned out to mean original ventilation, original roofline, and in one specific case, an original soffit vent on the east gable end that had been missing its screen for longer than anyone knew. Her mother, Bridget, was a pediatric occupational therapist. Her father, Sam, was a structural engineer. Between them, they had installed every approved safety measure the nursery required: outlet covers, anchor bolts on the furniture, a video monitor on a rolling 5-minute check schedule through the night, carbon monoxide detector with fresh batteries changed the previous month. They had done everything right. They had not thought to check the attic above the nursery. The wildlife removal specialist, when he came 3 days after the footage, said it was a young raccoon, probably a female. She had been using the missing screen as an entry point for at least 2 weeks, judging by the evidence she'd left in the insulation above the nursery ceiling. She had found the gap in the attic floor, a section of older boarding that had softened, and had begun to widen it during her nighttime activity. The gap, by the time it was discovered, was 4 inches across directly above where the crib was positioned. What the camera captured at 3:14 a.m. on a Thursday, debris falling through the gap into the crib. Insulation material, small and light, landing near where Cleo's head was positioned on the mattress. Cleo did not wake. She was, by the motion tracker's record, in deep sleep. She was 2 feet from the point of entry above her. Bridget reviewed the footage at 6 a.m. Friday, the morning after the Thursday night in question. She had gone to check the overnight recording because Cleo had seemed slightly fussier than usual at the 5 a.m. feed, and Bridget had a professional reflex toward evidence over assumption. She watched the 3:14 timestamp 6 times before she got Sam out of bed. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. What the specialist found that afternoon was significant not because of what had already happened, but because of what was actively in progress. The female raccoon had been denning in the attic space for at least 14 days. She had been accessing the gap above the crib nightly, and the gap was widening. She was carrying material through it. The structural gap itself had been created by moisture intrusion in the roofing that the original home inspection had noted as a monitored concern but not a current failure. The gap was exactly above where Cleo slept. Dr. Marcus Webb, Pediatric Emergency Medicine, told them at the follow-up appointment that the scenario they had described fell into a category of risk most families never considered because it required 2 independent failures to converge. Wildlife entry through attic access is not rare, he said. The failure point is the assumption that the ceiling is a complete barrier. For a room below active wildlife denning, it is not a guarantee. He paused. You reviewed your footage. That's the reason we're having this conversation in an office rather than somewhere else. Has your dog ever, or has any part of your home monitoring, caught something that made no sense until you understood what it meant? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The nursery was empty for 11 days while the roof line was repaired, the soffit vent replaced, the attic cleared, and the ceiling boarded and resealed. Cleo slept in the portable crib in the master bedroom. The video monitor ran in both rooms simultaneously. Bridget checked the footage every morning. The specialist removed the raccoon humanely and relocated her outside the county. The attic was clean within a week. The nursery passed a re-inspection before Cleo returned to a crib. The white crib was moved to the opposite wall from its original position. Sam took a photograph of the patched ceiling above where the crib had been and kept it on his phone. Not because he likes looking at it, because he looks at it when he thinks he's done enough. Every family and every guardian deserves the security of knowing what's happening in the spaces where they can't see. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The next story we're sharing involves something that entered a home through a much smaller gap, produced no sound, and was detected by no alarm in the building. It was detected by a dog. What you found and what it would have done to a 7-month-old is one of the most precise and documented cases we have come across. Sam still checks the footage every morning before he leaves for work. Not every morning reveals anything requiring attention. Most mornings the footage shows a baby sleeping in a room that is exactly as safe as it was designed to be. But the act of checking is something he has not been able to stop, and doesn't want to stop, because the one morning it showed something that required attention was the morning that mattered. He reviews the footage the way a structural engineer reviews a load calculation, not expecting failure, but never willing to assume its absence. The ceiling above the repositioned crib is solid and sealed. The soffit vent is screened with galvanized mesh rated for weather and wildlife. He had the attic inspected again in the spring. It was clean. He looked at the clean inspection report and felt something he didn't have a clean professional word for. Relief is part of it. So is the understanding that competence and preparedness are not the same as certainty. and that certainty is something a camera and a willingness to look can provide when nothing else can.